Hi friends, you're watching Faint Signals from a Vegan. My name's Trish Roberts. So I wanted to share a little story with you, a recent experience I had where I attended a workshop and they were doing issues about intersectionality and queer theory and some other issues that are associated with that, how to be a good ally for trans people, etc. And they were talking about various forms of oppression of humans. And it was very interesting, and it went for a couple of days. And as I was, and of course, as an ethical vegan, I'm always aware that there's a huge invisible group that we don't recognize, and that's because we're species and we've been indoctrinated not to recognize that group. And that group, of course, is non-human animals. And so as an ethical vegan, I'm always aware of this, and I often kind of, if I'm ever in a situation like this, I try and look for an opportune time to bring up that invisible group. And so there was a point in time on the second day where we were asked to form groups, and we had been asked to form groups during that whole workshop at various intervals to discuss certain issues. And there was a point in time where I felt it was a good time to bring this up, and they asked, did our group have anything to say? And I thought I'd get in first, and I said, yes, I wanted to say that because they were talking about how social justice, on the fringes, it actually moves up to the top. It actually, if we address fringe social justice issues, it all, moves up to the top, and it's a very powerful thing. And so I said, when speaking of social justice issues and how they also talked about forever learning, and how we're all forever learning, there's, as an ethical vegan, I said, there's a group that we don't really include in the moral community when we talk about oppression and about exploitation, and that is non-human animals. And these are the ones that we eat, wear, and use, that we're all eating, wearing, and using every single day. And it's 1 trillion land and aquatic animals every year are being exploited that way for trivial reasons of mostly palate pleasure. And I sort of added a few other comments to that, and it was received quite well, which is great, because sometimes people can get quite defensive, and they also, because you're talking about human social justice issues, they think that it's a completely sort of irrelevant in a way, or like a sideline, or it's a personal choice that, oh yes, that's, they could go something like, oh, well, yes, that's interesting, but, and we can all do something like that, we can make personal choices, to be vegetarian, and people think that vegetarian and veganism are the same thing. But anyway, she didn't necessarily go that way, and she gave me some space, the workshop person who ran the workshop, she gave me some space to say what I wanted to say. It wasn't very long, I could have spoken longer, but she gave me about, I suppose, 30 seconds, which is probably pretty good for most non-vegan sort of events. And then she, but I could see that had I spoken any longer, I could see she was sort of, was ready to kind of cut me off and move on, because she, underneath it all, probably thought that this was not really very relevant, because we were talking about human issues, as if non-human exploitation and non-human oppression isn't as important as human oppression. And that's, of course, a natural response for any of us who are not vegan, any of us who have been indoctrinated to believe that humans are the most important species on the planet. And we all have, from the time we're born, we're indoctrinated to believe that, and that animals are sweet and nice, or they're there for us to use in some way, whether it's eating them or experimenting on them or whatever. So this was the sort of, there was this, I could feel that there was this, just a brief opportunity where I could say what I needed to say and put it in as a concise a thing as I could, and hopefully I hope that planted some seeds. And there were about probably 4 vegans in this group of, say, 30 or so people who I think appreciated that. One of them happened to be sitting beside me, and she leaned over and said, "Oh, thanks for saying that." So that was nice. And of course, at this event there was a lot of non-vegan food there. We bought some vegan food along, and so that was good. But I mean, as usual. And so, here is the evidence of our oppression sitting on the table at this workshop where we're all talking about how we need to be allies and to those who are being oppressed, trans people, LGBTI people basically, and indigenous people, etc. So it was, it's an interesting thing, but and it is tricky sometimes, to sort of introduce this issue of veganism, which is such an important issue and is inextricably linked to our oppression of human beings and our exploitation of human beings. It's very, very, it's very closely linked, and if we don't address that, then we're not really even addressing the ground level of the oppression that's going on today in the world. So that's why, for, say, the person who was running the workshop, she actually told the audience that she was vegetarian. Unfortunately, vegetarianism still involves eating, wearing, and using animals, so I'm probably going to have a private conversation with her in an email about that and hopefully encourage her to go vegan. But the bringing up this issue, that people can't really see, if you're not given enough time, they can't really see that it's equal to the issues that involve humans and their oppression. But just being able to bring it up anywhere you can, it puts it in people's minds, particularly when you present it as an ethical issue, which it is. Veganism is an ethical issue, and you present it in a way which is about including non-human animals who are sentient in the moral community with all of we humans who are different groups. And of course, species is an irrelevant criterion, just as race, sexual orientation, gender, etc., is an irrelevant criterion as to whether individuals belong in the moral community. So if we can plant those seeds, if we're vegan, we can plant those seeds at these various events and try and talk about it in a calm and a very clear, morally consistent way, and that will plant seeds in those people, hopefully, that they will take away and hopefully do some further investigation. That's my hope. And I think, it can be a little daunting, when you are at events like this and you know that is going to be a confronting thing to say to people. It will come completely out of left field for a lot of people. Some will think, what on earth is she talking about? We're talking about humans here. That has nothing to do with anything. And she's trying to, sort of sidetrack, sideline. She's trying to, hijack this issue. Or they might just think, what a load of nonsense. Or they might get defensive and think that it's some sort of criticism of them. That's the other thing, which, some people do when you raise this issue. And even though it's not a criticism of anybody, I mean, I've been non-vegan most of my life. I only became vegan 12 years ago. So, unless we were born into a vegan family, we've all been non-vegan at some point or other. And so none of us have any sort of right to be judging anybody. But even if we were vegan from birth, it's not helpful to be judging anybody either, of course. And there's a whole stack of indoctrination that we've all been exposed to. So it takes some dismantling, but that happens with clarity and with being unapologetic, not being combative, not being offensive or sort of judgmental, but being very calm in your assertion about the issue and being very clear about it. That's the most important thing, being clear and calm and non-judgmental when presenting the issue. So, sometimes we only have a sort of a small window of time to get it out there, but it's very important. I wouldn't have felt okay with going home after that 2-day workshop without having mentioned and brought that to people's awareness in that particular event. And I often and I do that with with any event that I can, where there's some way that I can introduce that issue in an appropriate way. So, so what better place than a workshop where we're talking about oppressing vulnerable groups? And I am a part of one of those groups, LGBTIQ groups, and so I know what, I'm a white person, so I don't know what it's like to be a black LGBTQ person in that community. I don't know what that's like, but I know what it's like to be sidelined, to be marginalized, and to be fringe in a heteronormative society. And I've been on the receiving end of violence due to that, and also sidelined in some ways, in probably ways I don't even realize. But and that's just how it is, sadly. But what better time to bring that up in a sort of in that particular setting? So I think hopefully we can all just hope that these things resonate with people on some level, and on many levels, people know that there's something wrong with with eating and using animals. They know, because when you bring this up, people, the fact that they feel uncomfortable or even get defensive shows there's something there that is not sitting right with them. So, it's something that everybody already has an idea that what they're participating in is wrong and is oppressive. So it's not a far leap when you bring this up for people to grasp it, really, if you're clear. But also, it isn't surprising that because we're a part of such a species as society, that we might become a bit defensive or try and excuse it away or downplay it or call it a personal choice or something like that. So we should always be prepared that people might have those various reactions, and then some people might go, a light might go on, and they might think, oh wow, well, maybe I should look into this further, and that's what we hope for too. But whatever the reaction, even if it's a negative reaction, even if somebody gets very angry, that is a reaction. Indifference probably is the worst response. So any sort of reaction, whether it's anger or whatever it is some response, and that means it's resonated somewhere, and hopefully that will be some seed that will grow in the future. We can only hope that that's the case, and that's all we can do. Vegan education has always been the changing, what changes society, education, and so that's what we should all be trying to do if we're vegan. Try and learn how to, the most morally consistent way of presenting this very, very important issue, veganism. It is the most important social justice issue today, really, because everything really, a lot of things hinge on this. A non-violent life starts with becoming vegan. It's just the core, the ground level, really, of becoming trying to lead a non-violent life and a just life. And because non-humans are the most vulnerable group, and they're 99.99% of the planet's population, we have a moral imperative to, particularly if we're involved in social justice, human social justice issues, we have a moral imperative to embrace veganism and then try and spread this to other people, and it will grow exponentially, and it is growing exponentially. Even just in that small group of 30, there was 4 or 5 people were vegan in that group. So, you know, it's becoming more widespread, and it's not fringe anymore. It's not a fringe idea. It's really taking hold. So let's rejoice in that, and let's remember that every little seed that we plant, it could be one person, it clicks to that one person, and then the next thing they're out blogging, or after they've, you know, educated themselves about it, blogging or talking about it, and it spreads like that. That's how it will spread. So really, I just wanted to share that little story with you, which and you know, it's just one more way of introducing veganism to those who may never have thought about it before. So we can all keep that in mind anytime, whether you're at a checkout or whether you're, you know, and you've got a captive audience at a checkout, or wherever you are, there's some way you can introduce that probably to people. And if you do it in a calm and a morally consistent way, without judgment, it might land very nicely in that person's mind. Okay, well, that's really all I wanted to say. And thanks very much for watching Faint Signals from Vega. I hope to share some more live videos soon. And I've been away for a little while, so I'm just catching up on some things. And sometimes things come to me every day, and I don't get to sit down, unfortunately, and do something every day, even though I'd like to, because it's such an important issue, veganism. And also there are other issues that are important as well that I like to address when they're current too. That's sometimes helpful. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe to Faint Signals from Vega on YouTube. That's you can find that if you just click on one of the videos in this on Facebook. My Facebook user address is @VeganTroveExtra, and on Twitter it's @VeganTroveExtra. So thanks very much for watching. If you're not vegan, please check out my vegan podcast. It's a comprehensive vegan resource called howtogovegan.org. Thanks very much for watching. Bye for now.